Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the FTD Virtual Design Show titled Techniques of Design 2, Let's Kick It Up, featuring FTD Education Consultant and Jordan AIFD. As a quick housekeeping note, Anne will be taking questions during the session. So if you have a question for her, simply type it in the chat box in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. All right, let's get started. Welcome, Anne.
Hey, thanks, Janet. I'm glad to be back. Thank you, FTD, for this opportunity to be with you this afternoon. I really do enjoy it. I've done a couple of live programs, and that was wonderful to be with people, but this works, doesn't it? You can just take a half an hour, 45 minutes, and join an educational session. So thank you, FTD, for this opportunity. I truly do appreciate it. Hope you do too. Let's see. So I did a techniques workshop in the fall, and we had a lot of interest about it. Like, what else is out there? And so really, I thought if I just expound on some of the things that I did then, and just kind of revisit some things, and then also take a new fresh look at some other things. And so I had a fall presentation then. So this time I have a little bit more of a spring, kind of a beachy theme. So first, I wanted to start with inspiration in itself. Like, where does it come from? And it's different for everybody, I know, and for every situation. But when I was thinking about what Janet asked me to do, like, what's my inspiration for this session today? And I'm actually down in Florida, lucky for me, and I walk on the beach a lot. And so my inspiration for today is beyond the techniques that I'm going to use. But for me, I need permission. I need permission to do a lot of these things. And the permission for me is always through nature. Inspiration comes from all kinds of different places. So for me, it's nature in this particular setting. But sometimes doesn't inspiration come to us in different ways? Maybe it's art itself or design itself. Sometimes maybe music. And sometimes it's who you hang with, right? It's who you are with, maybe within a state florist association, being an FTD member. And when we're together and we kind of feed off each other, and that's how inspiration happens sometimes too. And so today with my theme of the beach, one more thing steps in. It's the spiral. And so with most shells that have this beautiful spiral shape, I just love to keep mimicking this. So it's repetition in design, repetition of the spiral shape. So many shells that I've picked up have that. Then also what I see when I'm at the beach are these repeating patterns. Look at the repeating patterns in that beautiful shell. And then this is, I'm not really sure what that is. We found it on the beach, and I found it to be fascinating because it's just repetition, repetition, repetition. And we look at basing techniques that we do. And this looks very much like what we do with some of our work when we're doing some tufted work pieces. And so for me, with what I do in floral design, and I teach this in a class that I have when I have students for a very, very long time, is I suggest to them, before you even start with elements and principles and techniques, where is it found in nature? And let that be your permission to do these things. You need some guidance. Well, sure, who doesn't? And so one book that's out of print, but it's still one that I use quite a bit. And if you have a copy of this in your design room, or if you can find it as a used copy, it's still a good orientation for a designer. So I'm talking about finding a book on materials like this that would be part of an orientation plan to train a designer. I believe we're floral arrangers for a while, and we use something like this as an orientation, and then maybe we move up to when we're training a real floral designer, like the AIFD terminology book, and look for this one to be a re-release, the third release, sometime hopefully this summer. We'd hope to have it by symposium, which is happening in July in Las Vegas, to release it then. But of course, with all the supply chain problems, there's a possibility that it might be there and it might not. But anyway, you'll be able to at least start ordering the new edition of this. I have had this for so many years, and it's about worn out. So it's time for me to get a new copy myself. And so there's some inspiration for you too in the books that we have. So I like to do a lot of hand-tied arrangements, but Keith White just did a program, and you can find it in the archives at FTD University and watch his hand-tied arrangements. And so I tried to not go there so that it's not too repetitive. But one thing I do like to do is natural mechanics, and I'll show you a couple of things in ways that I accomplish that. So this piece, I'll show you how it looks now and how it started. I have one of my favorite containers, and that's this. If I step away, you can probably see it as a silhouette. That this is one of the marketplace containers, the beautiful little white wooden box, and has such a wonderful liner. And this is very vegative in nature. It's monochromatic. I have a lot of driftwood that I found. You can see the theme that I'm going with a beachy type of a theme. So it's all natural mechanics. There's no foam in here. So the way I achieved that is I started off with this. So here's the wonderful box, and here's the floral mesh. Comes like this from Smithers Oasis. They were so wonderful to send me some things that I could use. And so I attached it here and made sure all the sharp ends were pointed in, because they do bite. So we want to make sure that all those little sharp ends are pointed in. And then I took this wonderful wire, which I adore, this bark, it's not bark wire, it's their rustic wire. And you just weave it through. And this is important, not just to wrap it around, but to weave it through, because this is what's going to be that holding medium for my armatures. So armatures aren't always something that you're going to hold in your hand. It can be something that holds up your flowers this way as well. And I'm going to show you a couple of different samples of that. But see how I'm making sure to weave it through here too, so that when I start to place my flowers, here's a silhouette of it, they go in just beautifully. I like to add texture. Texture is very important to me in design. And I love anything that has tons of texture. So this is some yarn that I found in a sale bin a couple of days ago at a Michael's. And this whole beautiful, beautiful, beautiful yarn has a little reflective silver. I don't know if you can see it, but that goes with my ocean theme too. And so this textural yarn, I think was only $4.50. I found that one, as well as this really pretty coloration. It's soft and adds the texture that I'm looking for. So then after I did this, I banded it inside and out and all around, building on my layering of my my armature. And so that's how I eventually got to my finish. So then you can see, you can also weave branches in this way after. And these are some quince branches that are just a little bit still, well, that one snapped on me, but they're a little bit still fresh. They were something that the wholesale house had, and they were past their prime, and all I wanted was branches. I love using branches. I'm from Maine, as some of you know, and birch branches are very, very available to me. So I use them a lot in design. Love adding that texture, but see how easy this is just to continue to add that grid system that's going to give me lots and lots of places to put my flowers, and they're going to stay in place. So that's the next step, is adding that.
And we've got a question from Beth.
Hey, Beth.
How did you attach the wire to the box?
It's tight. I wired it very tight to it, and it's not slipping at all, Beth. Look, it's not pulling out at all. And I thought that I would run a band of some wire around this too, and you can, but look, it's not going anywhere. So it's pulling the wire nice and tight, and it stayed just beautifully. So there's that. And then what I did was, to keep going with my beach theme, is I have the bullion wire that we love from Smithers Oasis. And hey, I got to tell you something. If you have any of the purple and the turquoise and the pretty pink anywhere in your flower shop, they're not selling it anymore. So use that and covet that stuff, because they have the gold and the silver only now. And so I use that bullion wire, and it's so easy just to string some of these seashells. And I also added a few beads. I love to use beads, and I found some beads at a thrift shop, so I'm always grabbing that kind of stuff. And then I just continue to go around and around and around, adding my shells. And so that is the mechanic, after adding a little bit of yarn too, that is going to hold up my flowers. I wove in quite a few more branches, and I'll show you how easy. Oh, one more little tip, because to add a water element, I had some orchids I wanted to use. So I took a water tube, and there's that pretty yarn and some of the wire. So if I wanted to put some flowers in specific places, like I did, and I'll show you that, I can use the yarn and I can use the wire to adhere wherever I want, inside or all around, whatever I want. And that's just a wonderful mechanic. Okay, so let me show you how that works. So here's my design, and I want to step away so you can see it against the silhouette, how just so pretty it is. And I tend to work, and I know trend now goes more towards some polychromatic, poly meaning many colors, but I tend to, for my own floristry, I do tend to stick to things that are pretty much just monochromatic and analogous, meaning really tight on the color wheel. So watch, I have so much in there. This is Orlea. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was from the Scabiosa family. It's really pretty. I got all my flowers from a great source down here in Orlando called Flora Essentials. They're really, really wonderful, and they got me great products. Now see, I can weave this into my armature, and look, it's just this nice little veiling of this sweet, sweet little flower. And I can go right down into the water source using natural mechanics. Not saying that I don't love foam. I use a lot of foam, but I think that this is just another thing that we can offer and show off this skill. See how the flowers just stayed exactly where I wanted them to go. And that's the power of that armature. Also gives me all that layering and the sheltering look. That's a great technique. Remember, there's elements of design, principles of design, and then there's the mechanics and the techniques of what we do. So anything at all has the elements of design. My bottle here of Crown of Glory has elements, right? It has form, line, color, texture. But does it look artful? No. What we do to it by adding the principles and by adding these mechanics, that's what makes it artful. Was this a little bit time consuming? Sure. And could I do it maybe even in dried flowers or permanent botanical flowers? Could I even do it with plant material? Yep. So that's the power of the armature. So I hope you like that. Let's see, I'll put this over here. I get to enjoy all these flowers. Let's see, so then next is encasement. And we've been doing encasement design. This happens to be an amaryllis bulb. I wanted this bulb because I'm coordinating this year's symposium called Roots. And doesn't this look just, if you've seen our logo, doesn't that look just like our logo of Roots? And so this is an amaryllis bulb. And I believe that certain flowers have this seasonality to them. And I'm hoping that everybody can embrace amaryllis year round. I want to see those big giant blooms year round. And so this is going to be a big double pink amaryllis. They came from a company that I work for from time to time called Bloom Maker. Sometimes you see those tulips and glass vases at a lot of the outlets, and they're one of the sources for that. So here's layering again. I started off with some seashells. This is the cinched base from FTD Marketplace, which is a wonderful, wonderful container. I love that it's wide and low. This is so many options, right, to use this. Started with my shells, added my rustic wire to veil it and to have it look like maybe there's some water in there. There's a lot of motion with that bullion wire, a little bit of driftwood. And so this is encasement design. We've been doing this for a long time. When I first started back in the olden days, it was the bubble bowl. Remember, we did the bubble bowl with the rose in it, and I could do those all day long. And so we've been doing it. It's nothing new. It's nothing new. But now designers have that idea of encasement to shelter something, to make it look important, to make it look protected. And that's encasement design. And this looks adorable right beside that design. I'll take some pictures of them in little vignettes and send them off to Janet, so you can maybe go back to Mark to look at those together. Let's see, FTD has this new logo. What do you think? Isn't that wonderful? So we talk about cleaning things up with a beautiful font, and can you believe it? FTD since 1910. So wow, it's amazing to be a part of something that really is part of American history, right? So there's that guy. Okay, so here's the next thing I want to show you. And so again, the beautiful bulbs that were sent to me. So here's 2 amaryllis. I'm gonna tip it up so you can see all the yummy stuff in there. There's a beautiful nest. Now this nest came to me from, who sent it? Knut Nielsen, and it was gold. And I thought, oh man, I love using gold all year long. I don't think that metallics are just for Christmas, particularly gold. Sometimes we're not using it as much during the all year long, but I always can find a place to use gold. And if you watch a lot of the home decorating channels, I do, and you see lots of use of brushed gold now. And I'm happy to have these warm colors come back. Love silver, adore copper, love bronze. But I'm telling you, I'm a gold girl. I do love that. So nestled right here in the middle is that pre-made nest. I enhanced it a little bit with some wire and some beads and some of my yarn. So it starts to look like me. Anybody who's ever worked with me knows I believe in branding. And my brand is very, very evident in everything that I do. And it's probably use of texture and lots of texture. I love ribbon, I love yarn, I love paper, anything that brings me another texture. So this is a very textural, it's called a tufted work piece, but this time, oh gosh, the popularity of plants, right? I think since COVID and during COVID, plants, it was hard to even get them in stock anymore because they were just selling like crazy because people were moving into their homes and wanting these comfort things, and plants do that for people. So this is called a tufted work piece, and it's in spiral shape too. So I started with the spiral of that bird's nest, and there's my permission from my seashell to place everything continually going around and around and around, starting with the very big bulbs into the narcissus bulbs down to the tiny little muscari. And then I had a few things pop up, such as some of this Brunia, and I made sure to use it when I use it right away. So all that short stems, I don't like that. I'm going to use it later pile. I'm going to use it right now. And the reason why I like doing that is because I like this type of work, these tufted work pieces where you're doing all the basing techniques. So I'm talking about clustering, I'm talking about pave, I'm talking about pillowing, all those that we use to cover the foam. By the time I was done with all these wonderful placements, I just had to tuck in a little bit of moss, a few little seashells, a lot of little bits of driftwood. And there is foam down underneath here. I cut it down to, maybe like 1.5 inches so that I could elevate those bulbs, and they'll grow right down into that medium. So I think that's pretty wonderful. And then in order to secure my driftwood, I just made a hairpin with the barked wire. If anybody still can get their hands on Dixon pins, man, I loved those things, right? Because it's wood stems down into the foam, but why not just make a hairpin? So you're just going to take a little length of the sparked wire, and the technique is just to turn it into a hairpin, and then you can secure that. And the reason why I like to use the barked wire is because it's decorative. I don't have to worry about covering up anything else. It's just going to stay in there very, very nicely and make that very, very deliverable. And so there's my little nest, has some feathers in it and some seashells. And I just adore things like that. Hope you do too. So I set that over here. Now, along with the nest theme, there's that nest again. They sent me two. You see it's gold on the back. And then I had some pussy willows, which I adore. And these are such wonderful pussy willows. The catkins didn't even fall out as I was weaving that around and around and around. You can see instead of eggs, can you see my spiral shape? So I'm starting with the spiral of the nest, and then I'm spiraling around with the sweet little pussy willow. And then here I have the, you can see that, I have the bind wire, actually it's bullion wire around some bear grass, continuing sweeping and sweeping and sweeping. A couple of feathers, and instead of eggs, there's my little seashells for their spiral shapes. And so gluing is what I'm gonna do next. So I already tied it off. So this is essentially all tied off already with the pussy willow stems, came down through the nest. And so that part is already finished. And so all I'm gonna add to this is a few of these wonderful cymbidiums that are this really pretty yellow green. I had a stem of those, and I got to tell you, there must have been 25 blooms on them, and all of them were good. So one of the techniques is to reflex, and so it's really important, particularly with these, that see, you just run your thumb. If they're cold, don't you want to do it when they're at room temperature? Just pull that back, and it makes them just smile. See how cute they are? Just love these things.
And we got a quick question from Lynn.
Hi, Lynn.
How are the bulbs secured to the foam?
Well, they will be when they root. And so these just came in a box and they were dry. And so as soon as roots shoot down into those, they will root down in that foam, and that'll secure them. But they're within the container too. They're not outside of the container. So that's going to help them to stay in. Now, if you pick them, which some people do, I really think it interferes with the growth pattern of that plant material. So I never pick a raw bulb into foam. I make sure that it's secure by keeping it inside the well of that container. And that's how I did that one. But they shoot off roots in no time, and those roots will go right down into that foam. You could even, for that one, if I had dirt, I could have put a layer of dirt. I could have put a layer of dirt down and place them in that. But these little buggers are going to grow great just in water. If you ever do any of this hydroponically, you'll know that the roots shoot off quite quickly. They were almost starting. Some of the roots were almost starting. And so I was glad to get those. So to glue on this, all I'm going to do with this one is make it really easy on myself. And I'm not going to wire and tape this in. I guess I could, but if I can glue, I just assume. So when you glue, you want to glue over that cut end. And that's going to keep, by putting glue over that cut end and on the back of the flower, it's going to seal the moisture into that. Okay, so on the back of the flower. And where's my lid? You know, you always lose the lid, right? Yes, I will find that lid. Yes, here it is. Okay, but another tip about it is keep these wraps handy, because that's the greatest way to clean that nozzle, like that. And then also you can see that I've squeezed that tip of the nozzle to just a tight little oval, and that oval will help it from just gooing out everywhere. You'll have a little bit more control on little projects like this. Now, you don't have to worry about gluing immediately, because the way this sets is the glue really needs to be a little tacky. And so what I like to do is find the home for where this is going to go. And I go in and I tap it where I want it. Then I pull away, and then I go back and put it in. Oh, just like that. Yeah, that's where I want it. And I'm trying to make everything directional. So I want these to all face into the center. I don't want it haphazard. See, I want it all to face into the center.
And we have another question about those bulbs. Somebody was asking, could you scoop out some foam to help hold that bulb in place?
Scoop out some foam? Yeah, I guess you could. But I don't think it's necessary. So, save the step. Let me get that piece out again so I can explain it.
And Colin is enjoying your storytelling with your designing.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, design is part of that. Okay, so here's the bulb. The foam is down here. And see how that's way down in? You can't even see the bulb from a side view at all. It's all from looking down in. It's not quite encasement. I thought maybe if I had something like plumosa or something, I could maybe put some of that and veil over the top of it. But because it's down inside that container, it's not going anywhere. So say if you say could you carve out little places? Sure. And the reason you might want to even consider doing that would be because you want out different elevations. And then so you could place the foam different ways like that, like we might with soil. And so, yeah. And you know, finding these little things on the beach, like the shells and the driftwood, yes, I do add for that as far as costing goes. And so, you know, it's all something that that I took the time to gather. And so, yeah, you're going to add for that too. All right. So any more questions about this one? It's going to be right here if I have to grab it again. It's pretty though, don't you think?
Lynn's got a tip to share with everyone though. She said, if you save the lids from your empty glue tubes, then if you lose a lid, you always have a backup.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, this is my yogurt jar. And usually there's lots of lids in the bottom of this, right? For full scale operation. Oh, here's another tip. This is a yogurt container that's upside down and I have a hole in it. And so for your bind wire, you know how if you gets all tangled up. So there's my bind wire from Oasis. And then if I just use this like that, then I can pull it off. And in my design bench back in my florist, I would always have a yard marked off on my design bench. So whatever I'm using, if I'm using the bark wire or all those wonderful wires from Smithers Oasis that we love to use, you have to add for that. So if you're adding by the yard, just make sure there's a place on your bench that marks off a yard. And as you pull things out, you'll know how to cost that into your design. So here's another cute tip, but thank you for the tip on the lids because we do lose those, don't we? Okay, so this piece then would, well, gosh, what did I do with it? Huh, I lost my bouquet. Oh, here it is. All right, so you can see there's this bouquet, the nest, and it's all tucked down in, and it is just darling. It's so easy to carry that this could be done well ahead of time. If you made this for weddings for spring, can you imagine if all you had to do the day before a wedding or the morning of, for goodness sakes, is glue in 3 spectacular blooms. If you're doing posies like this for prom, you can make this maybe a little bit tinier, but there's every reason in the world to buy these pre-made wonderful things. This one happens to be from Knut Nielsen. I really dig it. I think that gold is spectacular. There's a little bit of shiny element to it, and I'm always, always, always gonna love anything that's shiny. So there's another, remember where I started, with going around and around and around. That was my inspiration for you today. And I keep doing that same thing with this bouquet.
And Samantha has a question. She said, do you think these types of designs could sell anywhere? She would love to make things like this, but her boss says we can't sell anything like that.
Oh, come on. I'm from rural Maine, and I had a highly successful flower shop by making sure that I never use those words. I can never sell that. I can, and if I can do it in rural Maine, and did, and made really good money doing it. And my demographic is mill workers, farmers, fishermen, right? So we're not talking, when you think of Maine, that's what you think of, right? And that's who my clients were, with an average household income under 50 grand a year. And I could sell it. So I don't believe that. Try it is all you can say, and try it on a small scale. And I believe, Samantha, that you can say that. Now, if he flat out doesn't let you, there's not a whole lot we can do about that, can we? I feel that that's kind of sad because customers want to see this. If we keep doing the same old thing over and over again, customers are going to get bored with us. And flowers are available everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. If the bouquets that leave our store looked like the hands of a designer had something to do with it, then who are they going to go to when they want something that's unique, individual, and shows off your talent and your skill? And so I'm sorry it hurts me every which way that your shop owner had said something like that to you. I hope you can convince him, hey, have him sit down, tell him to call me. We'll have a little conversation, because I'm proof that you can do this. And if I can do it in rural Maine, I don't know where you're from, Samantha, but my population in my whole delivery area was under 15,000. The area that I'm in now working in is 3,000. And so it's not, there's the population isn't there. But if they can't depend on me to be creative, where are they going to go? Yeah, they need me. I'm the creative one. Good luck with that, Samantha. Okay. Any more questions? Keep them coming. Keep them coming. I love it. Okay. Here's another natural mechanic. And this is called Kubari. And so I'll show you the silhouette of it. This is the branches are quince. And there was something that they had at Floral Essentials that was just passing and they weren't going to bloom. And he was going to throw them out. And I said, oh, if it's a branch, I'll take it. And they're very thorny. So I think if you're doing anything for spring is like a Christian passion, that quince is a great thing to use because they just, the thorns are you know, part of that element. And so I do love the quince. And so I know it's not going to be blooming, but what I've done here is I've just taken the branches and I've massaged them gently, and then they bend for me. And so I have 5 bent quince stems. If you can't see my head, it's important you see this anyway, but quince stems bent back down into the foam. So Kubari is bent and or forked branches that you're going to use now as a holding medium. So I only got this arrangement this far, and let's see where we can take it from there. My flowers, I have mostly, sorry if I'm running out of places here. I just want to make sure you can see it. I'm going to do this over here. Oh, knocking things over. So Kubari is this technique. And much like, see how you can massage this, massage it and whip it right around and shove it right in. You know, when I first started doing this method, I didn't trust my mechanics, and I would always run a piece of clear tape over the darn thing because I was just so nervous that my mechanics weren't good, but my mechanics are sound. This is a nice, sturdy, can you see how sturdy this is as a holding medium? This container is from Smithers Oasis. It's called Essentials. And I was actually in China at a factory that was using this particular thing. They were actually making ironing boards at the time, but it's biodegradable and it's compostable, but it holds water beautifully and it has a real natural element to it. And with the ocean being my theme and seaside, I loved the wavy front of it. And this shape, I think, is just beautiful. So remember with Smithers Oasis, they sent me some supplies, but you buy directly from your wholesale house. You cannot buy directly from Smithers Oasis. So support your local wholesaler, but ask for Essentials. It's a wonderful thing to use. Okay, so now let's test my mechanics here. I have a few more branches. And I kind of wanted to elongate this. And by doing this, and I'm using the branches themselves to kind of weave through, see how I can do this. And it's giving me more places to design in. I can pull that right around, shove that in. I'll shove it in, and that is not a term, a floral term. Oh dear. Placed it. I placed it. Okay. So see how what I'm doing when I'm placing these stems is I'm adding what? I'm adding more of that crisscross grid into this Kubari. It's turning into a Kubari slash Pete, you're here. I know you are, Pete. See if you agree with me. This probably isn't technically a Kubari as much as it's a combination of that Kubari technique and the armature. So bent and or forked branches. There's also a term called buttress. And a buttress means to, actually, I'll show you that in my next piece. But that's another technique I want to talk to you about. So here you go. So all I've done is add some more, giving myself some more of that crisscross grid. And I want this to be really loose. And so
Pete agrees.
Pete agrees. Thank you, Pete. I miss you guys. Okay, so watch the holding medium. Ta-da. Isn't that wonderful? And so with this one, the proportions of this, I want them to be, a little bit random. I don't know that I'm going for shooting for anything in particular as far as proportion, but I'm noticing still in design are these random, wonderful designs. And so I think we probably do need a strong focal, which look at this guy. I'm telling you, I used him in everything, but this is the bottom part of that stem. I like a focal emphasis, particularly in a mixed arrangement. Look at this big stem, shoved right down into that holding medium. It's not going anywhere. Say hello, pretty babies. Yeah, that's what I like. Who could resist this? One of my favorite flowers. It's derived from the buttercup. So here we have this yummy orange. My favorite color is orange, ranunculus. I saw these and it was mutual. We fell in love. Let's see. So here, look at that holding medium without foam. So clustering is important to me. I go back to my brand, my own brand. It's part of my brand. I like clustering. It's natural. And so all this beautiful light kinds material, look at how fabulous they're just staying in place, just like that, because of my mechanics. Roses, I love these sweet little things. And so I think maybe I'll bring these to the front. My color story is analogous. So analogous, if you take the color wheel, I have one right handy. You take the color wheel. I'm staying kind of tight on the color wheel. And what that means is you come up with something in the end that is analogous. Analogous would be colors, usually 3, beside themselves on a color wheel. And so from this one is taking my favorite color, orange, and moving it into yellow. And so I have some other things I want to add into this. And I'm telling you, I say this every time when we're all together, that I get so good at doing this backwards. Who would design this way, right? But usually I like everything that I do, even when I do it backwards. So yeah, keep the questions coming. Groupings are important and telling a color story is important. So this little peach hypericum berry ties the difference, ties between the yellow into the orange. And so that's a really great thing. And then these just wanted to weep. I just put them in water this morning and I really was hoping that they would stay kind of weepy. They're fresh, they're beautiful tulips. But in order for me to tell my story, I love this weeping motion. Now, if you think your customers might not like it, well, then don't do it. But if it looks like they're not, that one didn't want to go. I broke a stem.
And do you recommend removing the foliage from the hypericum?
Yeah, that's a good idea to do it. Some people go as far as moving it down. I've seen Pete do this, but they look so naked, taking it right down, even this stuff, taking that off too. But usually I take off everything from here down and I leave the stems on the side. But you can get pretty drastic on that. But this is deliberate, these tulips weeping like this. Tomorrow they're going to hit the sun and they're going to be in a whole different place. But I wanted this weeping line. Don't you love this? I think this type of thing for sympathy is wonderful because it looks kind of sad, doesn't it? And it looks very thoughtful. And so, well, that's that same broken guy. One of my favorite flowers is Genestra, and it's available just a short amount of time, right? So I'm going to add some white in here with the Genestra. My point on all of this is the holding up of that mechanic, that Kubari. Can you see that everything is staying right where I wanted it to stay?
And as a quick, Amy had missed the beginning and she was asking if there was anything besides the branches for the base, but it's not.
No.
It's the branches and you just have water in there.
No, Amy, there isn't. It's just bent branches in a design, and that's all it's in there. So that white can't be alone. So I have a little bit of Veronica. And Veronica, I do take off quite a bit of the foliage because like the hypericum, that could wilt too very quickly. So I usually take off some of that. Now I'm cutting now with, yeah, I like that. But see how I'm keeping this very, very loose, very, very loose. And then I have some more, this kind of mix it a little bit on the casual look. My Kubari went away though, didn't it? I thought it was kind of pretty. So I could have done this maybe with less flowers and showcase the Kubari. But we know it's under there. And don't forget, these techniques are for plants too. So if you love to use plants, and I hope you do, that to use this Kubari to put plant material in, that would be just wonderful. I like mixed greens that are gray. And then to make it pop, I usually use some bright greens too. When you design this way, you can see how I'm largely adding my foliage last, right? Because the Kubari and the Armature base let me do that. And then one of my favorite bright green foliages for spring would be this bouquet. Bouquet lasts so well. It's just one of my very, very favorite things. So a little bit of bouquet in there, and look at how the colors just absolutely pop. And the lasting ability of this is one of the reasons why I really like it. So adding a little bit of that. I know it's a flower, not a foliage, but I use it like a foliage, and almost always I place my foliages last in my work. So there you go. That technique is called Kubari. And then I did some massaging techniques, placed things in groupings, and used a analogous color harmony. I'll step aside so maybe you can see it a little bit better. And I think it's so darn pretty. So this is the style I like. I like things loose and very, very natural. And coming from Maine, you can tell that that's something that would be very popular where I come from. Okay, I have one more. I hope we have time, Janet. I get a little yucky, I know. But I have one more. I'll do it quite quickly, but there's a technique.
We have time if you're speedy, which I know you are.
What's that?
I said, we have time if you're speedy, which I know you are.
I'll try to be speedy. Yes, I do try to be speedy. Okay. Well, there's a technique, a couple of things I want to show you in this one. And so I'll move this table here. It's a little bit tall, but I think you can see the whole thing. This is a container from Smith's Oasis. It's a tin. And I love things that have that organic nature. And I think metal is a great way to do it. These wonderful, ginormous mushrooms are from Knut Nielsen, and they're tinted in these wonderful greens, from very dark forest green to a light green. And I've stair-stepped those. Often we do it with Galex sleeves, how we place Galex sleeves one over the other, large to the small, and we stair-step them. So here with this type of stair stepping called terracing, is basing technique. Groupings again with these pods that were sent to me from Knut Nielsen. They're tons of fun, and they're called bamboo berries. And it's not a natural product. They've glued these little balls on there. I just think they're tons of fun, and I love that look. Driftwood from my beach vines. So I wanted the weight on the top. Very often we put the weight on the bottom. By the weight, I'm meaning the thicker part of the stem is on the top in this case. And very often we use the bigger part to the bottom going up to the smaller part. And I love the way that looked like a bird in flight. And so I wanted to secure it this way. What I have these observations, right? And one was when they plant a tree, particularly down here, the big palm trees that they plant. And then there's a spiking method that they use where they will spike 4 places around that tree, and they run a rope this way and pull it, that way and pull it, this way and pull it, and this way and pull it. And that does what? It keeps that material up straight. And that's exactly, I saw that and I said, it's a great mechanic. I'm going to use that for this type of application. So the skinny end here is then just like those trees. I took the tape, the bowl tape, this tape, and I went around that stick, pulled it this way, taped it down, pulled it this way, and taped it down, and did that in 4 corners. And that thing is in there really tight. I have to trust my mechanics though, because we know we're going to have to deliver this stuff. So then I also take wood stems that aren't fresh, usually a dried stem, that I put all around that. And that helps to keep that. And the reason why I use dried, because the dried is then going to do what? It's going to take up that water and swell in that, that hole. And now I know this is super secure. And so that's a tip I want to give you on just that observation of, I want my color wheel to get wet, of what I saw with the plant material. And so that mechanic works for me. Here's the water tubes. This time I didn't cover them because I think seeing water, if I'm going for that beach vibe, seeing water actually works for me. And there's another one over here and it's all on water. So
And where's that base from, the container? Edith was asking.
Oasis.
Oasis, okay.
Yeah.
And then Christine had a question on the last arrangement that you just did that was gorgeous.
Yeah.
Was it one-sided?
Yeah, it was, because I didn't finish the back. I probably could, but the way it is right now, it's one-sided. I can show you the back side with just a couple more stem placements. It could be viewed all the way around. And that's the power of not doing all that basing with your greens first, because if you do that, sometimes the back is just so heavily loaded with greens that that it definitely looks like a one-sided or a three-sided arrangement. So after I do this, I'll pull that back over and I'll show you the back of it, because seriously, just two more stem placements and that's very easily could be viewed all the way around. And so here's the other tin from Smithers Oasis. It's a little guy and they're available in three kinds of styles. There's this, there's galvanized, there's this kind of a whitewash, and then there's this, I think they call it rust, but I could be wrong about that. The Smithers catalog is on the website where you can get product code numbers. And if you like this sort of stuff, then you can bring that. Comes with a wonderful liner. And so stacking is the next thing I want to talk about. If you just indulge me just a quick minute or two, I'll show you this. I love doing this. And so what this is, again, I told you about paper, me and my texture. And so this is the, you know, you see these all the time. It's the stuff that you get at the craft show, these wonderful pages of all this fabulous paper. And so from that, I take my scissors that are like this, and they have a random pattern to them. See how the scissors have that cut that's just going to be random like that. And so keeping it random, what I did was made a shape like that. I've done this before at other FTD shows that I've done with sheet music. And so I cut a slit in it, and then you can take it and put it on your stem and then pull it around like that. And if you find a really pretty spring green, these tend to look just like, what's that green, tall, spiky thing? Bells of Ireland. So this, I wanted more of the softer green. And here I'm adding my texture, being true to myself, which you have to be, right? And there is some stacking method. And look how darn cute they are in there, right? So keeping a cluster of these right there. And I'm gonna grab this bunch of flowers. It's the way the camera works. I have to be so close to the close to you. So pardon me for reaching all over the place, but that's part of the way this is gonna go. All right, so the weight's up here. So very often with this, we would maybe place the bigger flowers down at the center. We're kind of taught that at first, aren't we? But where I already have some weight up here with what I've got going on already, could I place this up high? Look at that curve in that stem. Yes, I can. Look at that wonderful curve on the stem. Foam this time. There, I do have foam this time. These tortilla, that orange is just, is that not striking? And so I have that. One of my favorite things to get is this Crispidia. I do love to use Crispidia. And again, I'm going to keep my ball shapes all together. I could move them over the other side, but I kind of like them right here all together. So here's the Crispidia, keeping it vegative and parallel too. Can you notice how all my stem placements are pretty much parallel? Gives it more of a European essence of parallel placements. And things grow that way too, don't they? And so with that, I'm keeping it on the parallel side. And radial would be the other stem placement, which if you looked at that hand-tied bouquet of the pussy willows, that was most definitely hand-tied, excuse me, radial. I do have a trash can in here. I'm not throwing this on the floor. I can even hit it sometimes. Okay, so there's all my wonderful rounded shapes. And look at how that dark green is really showing up now on that. The roses that I got from the wholesale house, they're just as sweet as can be. And so I'm going to give myself a place right over here to keep them together, all like kinds, nice groupings. Let's see. Oh, that's too long. Nice groupings of the roses. I heard a question, Janet. Did you say something?
Yes. Christine was asking how long the orchids will last glued on that way, but they're not glued on. They're in the water tube, right?
Yeah, there's a water tube. If you can see right up here, there's a water tube. And when you're doing that, the water tube is full. And what you need to remember is that that whole stem has to be fully hydrated first. And so that was in water. I got these flowers a couple of days ago. I had it in a vase. And so that was fully hydrated because that stem isn't going to get to the bottom. You're only working with that short stem that's on the cymbidium. And so I have this, if I were doing this, maybe I wouldn't even use the lids. So it's really easy to add more water to those, but I did happen to use the lids on this time. Good questions, you guys. That's what I love about doing this, because you can still ask questions and the learning just keeps going, doesn't it? Okay, see this repeated pattern here? Look at the color of this is just mirrors that, doesn't it? And so I'm going to keep that together with that. I love the spiral uke. I think anything that looks like spring to me is probably the spiral uke. And so I'm going to keep a few little bunches of that. I think I definitely need something along this length that's looking a little bit naked. So my go-to for this one, I could have used, oh man, if I had some vines like Stephanotis vine or even ivy, I could have had that growing all over the driftwood. That would have been pretty cool. But I'm pretty happy with my choice of Genestra to give that falling weeping line. And to make sure that I have a weeping line on both sides, I have some bear grass. I already had it put on a wooden pick. And so when it goes in here, that it's going to hold nice and tight. And there's that lovely little cluster of that. You know, I have some of these left over. The absolute, look, oh, come on. Are we lucky? Aren't we lucky every day that we get to do this? So I'm going to bring these in front and center, keeping my clusters going. And I'll just finish this off like this. And you can see there's very little greening that I have to do. I also kept the foam under the rim. And so that's another tip. If your foam is above the rim all the time, you do have to use a lot of foliage. And so with this technique of keeping the foam kind of a little bit lower, you don't have to use as much foliage. It's not that I don't love foliage, I do, because obviously I'm a texture person and I want to be able to have all those wonderful textures. But I think my permission on this one is that it's spring. Well, maybe it is somewhere. I don't know where you're all calling in from, but that groundhog didn't do us any favors, did he? So the hope is spring. And my connection to spring is what's going on outside. What's going on outside right now is there's not a lot of foliage, right? And so I'm mimicking that in my designs. Very thoughtful way to design. It's a very thoughtful way to work when you work with the seasons. And I'll bring that line forward a little bit more. And there you go. Hey, I found 2 more flowers. Oh, isn't it beautiful? Keep those together. And I found 1 more of these, and I can anchor that. I have it, so I'm going to use it. This beautiful tortilla. Look how yummy that is. Talk about texture. I'm going to anchor that right there. One thing in my designs, I try not to have everything equidistant because we don't always find that in nature. So I think all this needs now is a little bit of bouquet. And then I am here to answer any questions you might have. Just send them off to Janet and she will let me know what you're thinking. So today, I'm going to leave you with a little bit of something. In this short presentation, these are the techniques that I did for you. Banding, binding, bunching, clustering, grouping, hand tie, Kubari armature, layering, pave, sequencing, stacking, terracing, tufting, wrapping, zoning, encasement, massaging, sheltering, buttressing. I use parallel stems and I use radial stems and I use tinted materials. And so just in these few designs that I put together for you, you can see how much that I incorporated in that. And when you have the tools, such as the books that I shared with you, it's important that you use that knowledge and pass it on to the workers that are in the design room with you, and always challenge each other. And so I hope Samantha can convince her boss that this is the type of work that people want to see. And I find this to be something that I would look at, even if this were a sympathy piece. This is something that to me looks like you had a conversation with the person about what they loved, where they lived, how they lived when we do thoughtful work like this. And so a lot of my work, I don't consider sympathy work any one kind of work. I consider it to be your most thoughtful work that you do. And so this, I'm saying to you, is a sympathy piece. So I hope you can think of it that way as well. It's vegative in nature. And again, it's analogous in its colors. So I'm staying tight on the color wheel, 3 colors side by side on the color wheel, including a primary. And my primary in this case is the beautiful yellow, moving over to the orange. And let's see. So if Yolanda indulge me that one more time, one more second, I'll show you the back side of that other arrangement. If somebody asked if that was, oh, what a mess I've made. I have truly outdone myself on mess making today.
Well, that was a lot of techniques, Anne, for sure. While you're grabbing that, Laura asked, how do you get the ranunculus to be straight like that?
Buy good ranunculus to start with. And so I'm not being fresh about that. It's your processing. And so ranunculus, I laid it in the sleeve. I cut the flowers and I put them in the preservative immediately. And then I leave them in the sleeve, and that helps to keep them very straight. That's what I do with those, but buy really good stuff. This is the prettiest ranunculus I got to tell you I've ever seen. I've never seen it that large and beautiful. So here's the front of this wonderful garden arrangement. And then here's the back. And so you can see I have a few leftover flowers right here. So with just a couple more spin, place. Look at how I can just keep going with this. I can just add one maybe, and then some hypericum, and there's nothing wrong with this front or back. I can add some hypericum. I can add a little bit of the bupleurum. And that's just what, 2 or 3 more stem placements. Turned that arrangement. I left the tag on here so I would remember to tell you that this was from Smithers Oasis, and that's the brand of the Eco-Essentials. That was what was on the back of that. And so there you go, very quickly, very easily, without a whole lot more of anything else. We can change that arrangement into an all-around design that could sit on a pedestal for a sympathy piece, or on a pedestal when people come into a church, and be able to view this wonderful garden arrangement all the way around. Ta-da! So that's that.
Wow. All right.
So, do I have any more time? Because I can keep going. You know I could.
I wish we could, but we are out of time, and it looks like we're out of questions. So I just want to thank everyone for attending. Fantastic content, and if you didn't learn anything, wow. Recording will
Thank
be
you.
available. I know somebody asked it and I put it in the chat, but it will be available on demand in the FTD Mercury Network Florist YouTube channel, probably tomorrow. And then for more education programming from FTD, visit ftdi.com to register for upcoming free webinars and design shows, as well as viewing those past education programs on demand. So
Yeah.
thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you to FTD too for supporting education. It's so important. And everybody who attended, thank you, thank you, thank you. Go to FTD University and share this, all those wonderful workshops that we've been doing all along since COVID started. And so they're there for you. So bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.